on the candle auction that starts to show up in terms of the outcomes. And it starts your idea about finding a buyer. And it's such an important concept because too many people try and buy on downticks and they don't look for the buyer to have appeared, and that's always going to be a mistake. So the idea just now is to try and get as many people looking for that first sign that there is at least a buyer visible. Is there a buyer visible here? No, there isn't. Is there a buyer visible here? No, there isn't. But when you start seeing a candle that forms maybe even like this, is there a buyer visible? The answer is yes, there is. There's a buyer starting to come in again, right? So at least we now know that there is some buying, but is it just profit take buying? Perhaps this is just a target price. Perhaps this is a short covering rally. So what would be evidence of a buyer coming back in again? Well, evidence would be a candle that was maybe here, right? That would be evidence of a buyer coming back in again, isn't it? So now you're seeing evidence of a possible buyer coming into play here. And now we can start considering the possibility that this is, because at this stage, this is still a one level. So this idea, of course, then we see this happening here. We see the price then running back to the bottom edge, and we see another buyer showing up again. Then that's now very, very strong evidence that on the two, you can at least start your buying. Now, obviously, what we're now looking at is if we can count to two, we can get to three, right? So if we can count to two, which this is obviously a two candle, then of course this now becomes a buy area. But again, if it's a big strong red candle into that buy area, how do you know there's any buying unless you're using an order flow to find that buying, leaning against a Baltic or leaning against a Baltic or leaning against for example, a POC of the candle? You're not going to know. So it's very, very important that if you're going to be a buyer, ask a very simple question. We told you this last year and for the last 10 years. If you're going to be a buyer, ask yourself one question. Are there any buyers in the marketplace? Or am I it? Are there any buyers in the marketplace, or am I the only person stupid enough to try and stop this train crash, right? Because you need to see other people coming in to have helped you out. You can't do it on your own. Now, one of the ways that we can see these people coming in is wholesale price levels. Because obviously, if this is a wholesale price level, then, if there's a wholesale price level, for example, running through this area here, whichever price it is, then at least you know there is always going to be liquidity at those price levels, and we start recognizing that that could be a real thing. It's such an important aspect, and order flow allows us to make a lot better read when we see it. So when I'm looking to maybe buy this in NASDAQ off of the 70s, right? So we're looking down at this 720 area here. You might be saying, why are you looking for a NASDAQ buy in the 720s? Any idea why we're looking for a NASDAQ buy in the 720s? Well, it's just about looking backwards and having a look to see what else has happened, right? We've seen a very strong case to buy here before, right? So there was a buyer here, there was a buyer here. So we know that there's buyers achieving higher prices. So why would I not want to buy back into this area? So when I'm looking to buy back into this area, did we see any buying coming in here? Yes, we did. So we've seen buying coming in. Did it achieve a level two? Yes, it did. So that's a two. If that's a two candle, then this must be a three here, right? So we're looking for buying showing up. On a solid red candle, you don't know that you've got buying yet because it's a solid red candle. But when you start seeing the candle buyer coming in here, and then you see a pin rejection below here, this is an absolute no-brainer buy trade now. We can take a shot at this buy trade. You've got a lot of confidence that the buy is there because you've seen it, not because you think it's going to be there, not because you're praying or hoping that it's going to fall in behind you, but because you can actually physically see the buyer showing up. And with the buyer showing up here, and then the buyer showing up here, and then the buyer showing up here, you've got a lot of confidence to now take your shot at the upside here. And the same is true of this little exhaustion phase here off the VWAP. You've got a buyer shows up here. You see a buyer coming in there. So you're then looking for a level two because that's a one at this stage, right? That's the one. You now get a level two. So you've now got your three. So there's your opportunity to buy into the three. When you think about how easy it is to find these incredible trades, you really can't not see these things simply by keeping your charts up to speed. If you haven't yet seen a buyer and you want to be a buyer, just make sure you pull away your bids and say, wait a second, I'm the only guy that's buying this at the moment. I cannot be the only person that's buying it because I'm not going to be successful. But once somebody else buys it, you might think you've missed it. You haven't, because institutions will want to get liquidity now that the buying is in, and they will want the price to come back down towards the bottom edge, if not through the bottom edge. So don't despair. It'll give you a chance. And if it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't. Well, it doesn't. Well, end of. That's the end of the discussion, right? It didn't give you the chance then to join in. And obviously, if you see a lot of selling delta, like, and this is what we were talking about, this type of situation here. So you might say, oh, I was sitting down here waiting at 32s. Yeah, what were you waiting for? I was waiting for sell side liquidity. Okay. So you're waiting for sell side liquidity. What's this here? What is this sell side delta here? What is that? That's selling liquidity, isn't it? So you were waiting for selling liquidity and you've seen selling liquidity. So did you take your trade? No, I was waiting at 32s. Why were you waiting at 32s? Because I was waiting for sell side liquidity. But you saw the sell side liquidity. Why are you not on the trade? See what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense, does it? So when you see that as an opportunity, you start recognizing in the background that there is a buyer here. Do you see them? So you now know there's a buyer in here. So because you now know there's a buyer, and that's a Charlie D reversal candle, you now know there's a buyer here. So now you can now take part in the buying as soon as you see any new buying coming in. So as soon as that candle finishes, you could buy it. As soon as this bottom edge rejects, you could buy it. You could be in the buy trade somewhere here. As soon as you see the buying, I'm not saying sit on the bid here at the bottom edge and hope to get filled at 740s or whatever. I'm saying watch for another buyer showing up. Watch for that absorption taking place. Get into the order flow voltics and your POCs of the candle and look for that absorption and then join in. You've already seen a buyer here. You're not waiting for the buyer. You're not waiting for sell side liquidity because you've got it. It's there. Take your shot. And if you take your shot, you're aiming for this box up here. And you've just achieved the box up here. Nice trade, nice outcome. Very, very good profit. 32s up to 72s nearly for another $800 profit. Great trade.